Imagine being taken from the world. No goodbye. No final conversation. No chance to explain your innocence. Just silence and a locked steel door. Now imagine that door never opens. Not for a year. Not for a decade. But for 43 years. This is the story of a man who spent nearly half a century in a room smaller than a parking space. A man who didn't just lose his freedom, he lost time itself. His name is Albert Woodfox, and this is what happens when a human being is erased from the world without being killed. Before we begin, understand one thing. This is not just a prison story. This is a story about what happens when the human mind is pushed beyond its limits and forced to survive inside absolute isolation. Deep in Louisiana, surrounded by fields and silence, stands one of America's most infamous prisons, Louisiana State Penitentiary. Most people know it by another name, Angola Prison. But few know its origin. Before it became a prison, this land was a plantation, a place where enslaved people worked under brutal conditions. That history never truly disappeared. It simply changed form. Today, Angola is the largest maximum security prison in the United States. Thousands of inmates live behind razor wire fences, surrounded by armed guards on horseback, watchtowers, and endless isolation. Escape is nearly impossible. But the real punishment here is not escape. It is existence inside it. Because inside Angola, time behaves differently. For some prisoners, life doesn't progress. It freezes. In 1972, a prison guard was murdered inside Angola. Fear spread instantly. Lockdowns began, investigations followed, and soon authorities needed answers. 3 prisoners were accused of the crime. Among them was Albert Woodfox. The evidence was weak. Witnesses were inconsistent. There was no physical proof linking him to the murder. But in a prison system under pressure, certainty was not required. Only closure. He was convicted and sentenced. But his sentence was not just life in prison. It was something far worse. He was placed into solitary confinement, and he would remain there far longer than anyone could imagine. The cell was small, very small. Concrete walls, steel door, a narrow slit for food. No windows wide enough to see the sky. This became his entire universe. The routine was simple. 23 hours inside the cell, 1 hour alone outside, then back again. No conversation, no human touch, no real contact with the world. Days passed, then months, then years. But something strange happened. Time stopped feeling real. There were no seasons inside the cell. No sunrise, no sunset. Only artificial light and silence. Absolute silence. At first, he counted days. Then he stopped, because counting only made the reality worse. Years began to blur. Memory started to weaken. Even identity began to shift. Who are you when no one speaks your name? Who are you when the world forgets you exist? Inside that cell, Albert Woodfox was no longer just a man. He became an idea, a shadow of a prisoner inside a system designed to erase him. Human beings are social creatures. We are built to speak, to interact, to feel touch, to recognize faces. Remove that, and the mind begins to fracture. At first, it's subtle, a conversation with yourself. Then it becomes louder. You start hearing responses that aren't there. You start imagining movement in still corners. You begin to question what is real. Prisoners in Angola reported similar effects. Talking to walls, hearing voices, seeing shadows move, forgetting language patterns, losing emotional control. This is not fiction. This is psychology under extreme deprivation. Solitary confinement has been compared by experts to torture. Human rights organizations, including Amnesty International, have repeatedly condemned prolonged isolation as inhumane. But inside Angola, it continued. For Albert Woodfox, the struggle was not just survival. It was resistance against mental collapse. Every day he had to remind himself, I am still here. But after years of silence, even that truth became harder to hold. Most prisoners measure time in hope. Hope of release, hope of appeal, hope of change. But for Albert Woodfox, hope became distant. Appeals came and went. Court decisions dragged across decades. Meanwhile, his body aged inside a cage of stillness. Imagine this. The world outside changed completely. New presidents, new technology, new generations. But inside the cell, nothing changed. Same walls, same silence, same routine. 43 years passed like this. That number is difficult to understand. It is longer than most marriages, longer than entire careers, longer than the childhood, adulthood, and retirement of many people combined. And all of it inside a box of concrete. As years passed, doubts grew stronger. Was he truly guilty? Or was he a victim of a broken system? There was no solid physical evidence. Witness testimonies were questioned. Procedural issues emerged. Eventually, the case became a symbol of something larger. The risk of injustice inside long-term incarceration systems. International observers, legal experts, and rights groups continued raising concerns. Again, organizations like Amnesty International highlighted the case as a possible wrongful conviction. But the system moved slowly, too slowly, and inside that slowness, a man continued to disappear in real time. Finally, in 2016, the door opened. After 43 years in confinement, Albert Woodfox walked out, not as the same man who entered, but as someone shaped entirely by isolation. The world outside was unrecognizable. Cars, phones, buildings, language, everything had evolved. He had to adjust not just to freedom, but to existence in society. He once said, "I survived, but part of me never left that cell." Because how do you recover from losing your entire life? How do you measure freedom after losing 4 decades? Now think about this carefully. We often imagine prisons as places of punishment. But what is the real punishment? Violence? Overcrowding? Fear? Or something quieter? Something slower? Something invisible? Because in Angola prison, nothing screamed, nothing attacked, nothing moved, and yet it destroyed minds. So the final question is not just about one man, it is about human limits. What breaks a person faster? A violent world? Or a silent one? Because sometimes, the most terrifying prison is not built with walls, it is built with time. And time never forgives. If this story shocked you, share it with someone. Because stories like this should not be forgotten. And comment below. Do you think solitary confinement is justice or torture?